So welcome to math class. Hopefully you can grab your notebook and set up your table of contents if you're doing that this year. This is Unit 321 and it is titled Back to Solving Equations. And again, you will only need your notebook today. So let's get started. I'd like you to follow along as I read the introduction to you. So our introduction, in Unit 2, you learned how to solve equations by first using a mat and then extending that learning to non-mat solutions. During this learning, we discovered the idea of flipping in order to simplify equations. Today, we're going to go back to that process of solving, checking, and finding solutions to equations. Your learning target for today's class is I can solve equations using proper algebra steps. But before we begin, let's think about this question. So Preston solved the equation 3x minus 2 is equal to 8, and he got that x was 100. My question to you is he right? And how do you know he's right or wrong? So what I want you to do is pause this video for a second and think about some reasons why he would be right or he would be wrong. I would also like you to write the equation down in your classwork notebook and use your supporting information to prove whether he's right or wrong. So hopefully you had a moment to give this some thought. What I hope you came back with was if x was 100 according to Preston, that would mean that when we substituted x back into the original equation, we would get two sides that would equal each other. For instance, we would have 3 and then parentheses 100 minus 2, and that would be equal to 8. Sorry, I'm using a different marker and it's not working well. I would end up with 300 minus 2, this is driving Mrs. Brewer crazy, is equal to 8. Well, 300 minus 2 is 298. And we both know, all of us, that that does not equal. So is he correct? No. And how do I know? I know right here because I put that value in and solved it and knew very much that that was the wrong answer. My thinking question to you right now is, do you know what the right answer is? So if you were to try to figure out what the right answer is, you would need to use your correct and proper algebra steps. And that's what our lesson is about today. So these 5 steps are steps that you should already have written down in your classwork notebook, but I would invite you to pause and rewrite them again one more time. These are a little bit more broken down than what we took down the first time. So let's go through them together. The first step, do you have parentheses? If you have parentheses, you want to clear the parentheses by doing the operation indicated by the parentheses. Now, parentheses can mean multiplication if you have something like this, where that would result in a 10. It can also mean do the information inside first, where you would do this information, then you would multiply. Or our third option would be to have something like this, which would be our idea of using the flipping. So you would take that x, or you would take the 2 and it would become a negative 2 when it came out, and the negative x would become a positive x. So you want to clear the operation first before you go any further. Step number 2, can you combine like terms? So we have talked about that also. If you have an equation and you have some information and then an equal sign and some information, you can only combine like terms on each side. You can't combine like terms over this barrier right here. Is x alone? Is x alone? Do you have 3x plus 4? That means x is not alone. Do you have 2x minus 2? X is not alone. So you have to add or subtract depending on what the values of the numbers are to move them to all one side. You want all your x's on one side and you want all of your numbers on the other side. Understanding that you can have a value in front of x, that's different. Step number 4, you want to divide using only a fraction by the coefficient of x. You are never to use, ever to use the division symbol. And step number 5, you check your solution and you show every single solitary step. So you show your steps. And it's so important that you show me everything, right? I would also like to point out that since these are specific steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, that means you can only do one step at a time. You can't flip or clear your parentheses and combine like terms at the same time. You do one or the other. So we are going to start out with our very basic simple equation. 2x plus 4 is equal to 8. So do we have step number 1? No. We don't have any parentheses. Do we have step number 2? No. We have no like terms. Do we have step number 3? Yes. Because I have a plus 4. Okay? So I have to do the opposite of plus 4, which is minus 4. I like to do this. That is my intentional 0. Whatever you do on one side of your equal sign, you must do on the other side. That is the first rule of algebra. So the 4's go away, so I have 2x, and that's going to be 8 minus 4 is 4. So we're done with step 3. Step number 4, I have to make a fraction to divide. So I have to divide by the coefficient. The coefficient is 2, and again, you must do it on each side. So I believe that my value for x is 2, but I am not done. I have to check. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check my solution. I'm checking when I believe x is equal to 2. I start with my original equation. I show the substitution value. I prove operation of order of operations. And that is a true statement. So that is my solution. Okay, so let's do the second problem. So step number 1, do I have any parentheses? I do not have parentheses, so no parentheses. Step number 2, can I combine like terms? No again. Step number 3, yes. I have x's on each side. I have numbers on each side. So my job is to move all of that stuff so that it's all on the same side. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I usually like to keep my x's positive, which means I'm going to take this x right here, this negative 2x, and I'm going to move that over to here. That's what I'm going to do. Okay? So I do that by doing the opposite. The opposite of negative 2x is positive x. So I'm going to add 2x right here. I'm going to add 2x here. This is my intentional 0. So what's left is 4, and that's going to equal 3x plus 10. Am I done with step 3? No, I still have this plus 10. So I'm going to remove it by doing the opposite. Four minus 10 is negative 6. That's going to be equal to 3x. I'm done with step 3. Step number 4, I have to divide by making a fraction. So I divide by that coefficient of x. I have x is equal to negative 3 because, ladies and gentlemen, I have this negative symbol and it's got to come down. So please don't lose track of your negatives, okay? So I'm done, and what I want to do now is I want to check when I think x is equal to, oops, Mrs. Brewer made a mistake. Let me go back and fix that. I think everybody probably was yelling. This should be a 2, right? Oh, and it's not going to let me erase. That's so annoying. So that's okay. You make mistakes, right? When it equals 2, negative 2. So when x is equal to negative 2. Everybody makes mistakes. It's okay. So I have 4 minus 2 times negative 2. And that is going to be equal to negative 2 plus 10. I usually like to finish one side first. So I'm going to do this math here. So I have 4. A negative 2 times a negative 2 is a plus 4. And then that's going to be 8. So negative 2 plus 10 is 8. So I am correct. So x is equal to negative 2, not negative 3. Okay, let's keep going. New problem. I do not have step 1. I don't have any parentheses. So step 1 is a no. Step number 2 is a yes. I have like terms. Let's take a peek and see what they are. I have this as a like term, and I have this as a like term. Remembering that they're on one side of the equals. I don't have anything on the right-hand side. So I'm going to combine those before I move any further. I am combining these two. 5x minus 2x is 3x. I'm going to bring the plus 4 down, and I'm going to write the rest of my equation. So I'm done with step 2. Step number 3, yes, right? I have to start moving stuff. I always go after my x's first, so I'm going to remove this x. That is my intentional 0. So I have 4x plus 4, and that's going to be equal to 8. Now I need to continue with step number 3. I'm going to subtract 4 from each side. Again, that's my intentional 0. So I have 4x, and that is going to be equal to 4. So I'm done with step 3. I'm on step 4. Yes, I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to divide by making a fraction. 4, the coefficient of x. So x, we believe, is equal to 1. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check that when x equals 1. I must start with the original equation. I'm going to write the whole thing down. I'm just going to copy it. Please don't skip steps. No lazy work. And now I'm going to substitute, showing that step, the value of 1 every time I have an x. Okay, I'm going to provide order of operations. I have 5 plus 4 minus 2, and that's going to be equal to, I am going to just rewrite this down. Now I'm going to do a little bit of adding and subtracting. 5 plus 2 is 9, minus 2 is 7, and I'm hoping that that equals 7, and it does. So our solution for this equation is x is equal to 1. All right, step number 1. Do I have parentheses? I do have parentheses. So I have a yes here. So I have to flip. So I'm going to have negative 2 minus 3x minus 2, and that's going to equal minus 2x and minus x. Step number 2, yes, again, I can combine like terms. Let's take a look. I have constants here on each side that I can combine. I also have these are both variables, and I can combine both of those. So I have two things to combine. So minus 2, that's minus 4, minus 3x, and that's going to equal minus 3x. So right now, you might be thinking, uh-oh, I think we have a problem. But keep going, right? So I'm going to move my x's. I guess I'm just going to move this one, plus 3x. That's my intentional 0. Plus 3x. That's my resulting 0, right? So what I have left is minus 4 is equal to 0. Is that a true statement? It is not. So I am assuming that I have no solution. Do you remember that? To this equation. So I'm going to check. And we decided that we were going to be checking when x is equal to 0. All right, let's write down the entire thing. I know it's a lot of writing. Minus 2 minus 3x minus 2, and that is equal to negative 2x plus x. So we're going to put in the value of 0, and things get easy right after that. All right, so that goes to 0 right there. So I have negative 2 and negative 2, I have negative 4. And then that goes to 0, so I have 0. I have 0 plus 0. I have negative 4 is equal to 0. And that's kind of what we got over there. That is not true. So we know that we actually have no solutions for this set of equations. And that's it.